While some may be familiar with the works of the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper, there are many other serial killers that have committed heinous acts and have never been identified. For all we know, they could still be lurking around, ready to kill at any moment. In today's video, we will be discussing 5 serial killers that were never caught. Before we get started, remember to subscribe and tap that cute little bell icon before it taps you. Number 5. I-70 Killer. In April 1992, 5 women and 1 man were killed in shopping malls and stores off of exits from the highway I-70, which connects Utah and Maryland. The I-70 killer went after women who were isolated and working alone. Once the number of murders started to climb, it became clear that there was a killer on the road. One of his victims was a woman working alone in a Payless shoe store within a secluded mall. The killer apparently circled around the store several times before he decided to enter it. Witnesses say that he sat across the street from it, giggling and talking to himself, before shooting the woman and disposing of her body behind the store. Just days later, he arrived at a bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas. While the store would normally close at 6 p.m., it remained open for an unnamed witness and close friend to Patricia Maggers, one of the women working the store that evening.
Closing up shop for the evening. Only the last customer is a killer. 2 women found murdered in a Wichita bridal shop.
Just in the wrong place and the wrong time. To me, it makes them very true victims.
A 17-year-old Wichita murder linked to the I-70 killer who targeted women on a stretch of road.
This is the one case I do want to get off the books because this one sticks with me.
The witness was greeted by a small, red-headed man with a semi-automatic. The witness managed to escape as he called the police. He was able to give a detailed sketch of the I-70 killer. Once the killer entered the store, both women working there, including Maggers, were shot dead. More murders happened throughout that unforgiving April in 1992, all connected due to each victim dying by the same bullet, and therefore by the same hands. And just like that, the I-70 killer vanished. Number 4. Doodler. Northern California is known as an infamous spot for serial killers. From the Zodiac Killer to the Golden State Killer, murders are prominent all over the West Coast. The Doodler was a serial killer from San Francisco, California, who targeted gay men between the years 1974 and 1975. He is known to have killed between 5 and 14 men, who he lured into sexual encounters and then stabbed them to death. He would leave their bodies scattered around the city, near the destination where he found and befriended them. Although many people died due to the hands of the Doodler, a handful of men survived and lived to tell the tale. One of the victims was apparently a diplomat and a well-known entertainer, who would have lost his career if his sexual orientation was made public. Due to this reason, he did not testify to the court, as that would mean for him to publicly out himself. Many victims stayed silent because of this reason. As for how the Doodler got his name, many victims and witnesses have said that the man would doodle or draw a quick sketch of his victims before he decided to assault and kill them. Many of the bodies were hidden in Ocean Beach, where victims were found stabbed, slashed, and brutally wounded. The Doodler was never found and remains a horrific memory to some and a mystery to all. Number 3. West Mesa Bone Collector. New Mexico had never seen anything as gruesome as the work of the West Mesa Bone Collector. On February 9, 2009, a woman walking her dog in her small Albuquerque town of West Mesa discovered a human bone sticking out from the ground. It was the discovery that would lead to the investigation of multiple missing women. Later that year, 11 decomposed bodies were excavated from shallow graves, scattered across a huge plot of dry farmland. The women displayed similarities, as many were young and Hispanic. all the women had gone missing years before that, some as far back as 2001. Many of the victims were drug users and prostitutes, and one 23-year-old was 4 months pregnant when she was killed, buried with the fetus still inside her womb. The bones of each victim do not reveal how the women died, and there was no DNA found at the burial site. There are 6 women who are still classified as missing between 2001 and 2006, as the remains have not been found. The scary thing about an area like West Mesa is that there are dozens of isolated spots exactly like where the remains of the victims were found, which means there could possibly be more victims scattered around the town, and no one would know. Number 2. The Cleveland Torso Murderer. While walking along the shores of Lake Erie in 1934, a man discovered something gruesome. It could hardly be called a body as it was completely hacked up and dismembered. It was a woman's torso from her neck to right above her knee. The skin was red and leathery, the reaction of a chemical used on the body.
The term serial killer did not even exist in the 1930s, but it perfectly describes the unknown madman known as the Torso Murderer, the Mad Butcher, and Phantom of Kingsbury Run. America's first serial killer prowled for more than a decade and was never caught.
From the years 1934 to 1938, the Cleveland Torso Murderer killed, dismembered, and castrated 12 victims and was gone without a trace. The woman that was discovered along Lake Erie was dubbed the Lady of the Lake, and the rest of her body was never found. Years later, she appeared to be a part of a similar series of murders committed in the area. The body of a 28-year-old man was found in Kingsbury Run. He was discovered only wearing his socks and decapitated. What gave the Cleveland Torso Murderer his name was how he would dispose of his victims. Every body found would be chopped up into various pieces, with the cause of death being decapitation or dismemberment most of the time. The victims seemed to be those from the lower class, derelicts from shanty towns around Kingsbury Run. The bodies were so dismembered that only 2 victims were ever identified. The murders stopped in 1938 when Safety Director Elliot Ness decided to burn down the shanty towns of Kingsbury Run to the ground. Number 1. The Long Island Killer. Long Island, New York and its surrounding beach towns have always been known for their quiet serenity and sweet suburban charm. For many living in Manhattan, Long Island is a vacation spot, a place to get away and relax. All that changed when Shannon Gilbert, a Craigslist sex worker, went missing near Oak Beach, Long Island in 2010. A chilling 23-minute 911 phone call was placed on the night of Gilbert's disappearance, as Gilbert struggled and screamed, "They're trying to kill me!" Things were silent on the case for a while until December 2010, when a Suffolk County investigator stumbled upon some skeletal remains buried in Gilgo Beach. The remains, however, were not from Gilbert but from Melissa Barthélemy, another Craigslist sex worker that had been missing from the Bronx since 2009. Upon further investigation, the remains of 3 more missing persons were found. All were women, all in their 20s, and all had been sex workers. It seemed that there was a serial killer on the island. In 2011, 6 more sets of remains had been found near Oak Beach. One of the remains included a skull found in Tobay Beach, which was matched to a pair of legs that washed up on Fire Island back in 1996. The Long Island Killer has been in the news recently, as the remains of a woman that went missing in 2000 was identified as an escort from Philadelphia. Her remains were found scattered within 40 miles of each other, near Gilgo Beach. Gilgo Beach seems to have become a premature burial ground for these young women, all by the hands of the Long Island Killer. Remember to be alert, as a few of these may still be alive and ready to strike again. If you're interested in more stories like this, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And for the love of God, please stay insane.